was such a humble man. He never talked about himself. They cared about the community. They wanted the community to succeed.
He would say, "It's just easier if we go there to give dog shots or pull quills from a dog's nose in Hillsgrove Hotel."
He understood that he was in the relationship business, whether that was printing a newspaper or practicing veterinary medicine. It was a relationship.
You always have to give back to where you live. And what a great place to give back to.
Whether we're dear friends, community members, family members, we all love Doc and Stevie Shoemaker.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like you to welcome this morning All Saints Day, which is would have been Doc's 97th birthday. 98, sorry. We have distinguished guests, Secretary of Agriculture, Russell Redding, Tina Pickett, our rep, and Sandy Tosca from PennDOT, and all the Shoemaker family. This is just a welcome, get started, just a few things. Doc was our true Renaissance man for Sullivan County. He was born in Wyoming, graduated from Penn State, served in the U.S. Navy, worked on the Manhattan Project. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Veterinary School and moved to Sullivan County in 1952. He and Stevie raised their 6 kids, sent them to college, and while serving the farming community, he also taught biology and chemistry at Turnpike High School. As the dairy farms diminished, he purchased the Sullivan Review and made it the outstanding publication that it is today. Active in Dusharp Borough Council, and that's who I'm representing, the Borough Council, and later as County Commissioner, he and Bob Lambert, Leo's dad, and Bob Getz, who's with us, and Father Carr, traveled to Philadelphia, met with HUD, and we were able to get Sullivan Terrace built. He also worked with Dr. Barth to make the LaPorte Medical Center possible, and later was instrumental in the development of the Highlands Nursing Home, and his contributions go on and on to Sullivan County. After Stevie's passing, Doc, Sally, and Doc's accomplished Martina, who is here with us today, aide, helped him keep his practice open almost into the moment of his death. He was truly an outstanding person. And we'll turn this over now to PennDOT, to Sandy, who will keep the ball rolling here.
Thank you. I had first met Doc Shoemaker around 2004 as part of our annual media outreach meetings. And I was truly impressed by Doc and Stevie, and often we met at the Jolly Trolley when we met, and we would talk about our transportation projects, we'd talk about our funding, and they had a real keen interest in what we were doing. You know, often we meet with a lot of media, and I'm not here to offend any of the media, but some aren't really interested or engaged when we're meeting with them, especially on the dry information. They always had plenty of questions for us. You know, it was just a real pleasure. You know, sad to say, I didn't realize all of Doc's experiences and accomplishments really until his passing. He was such a humble man. He never talked about himself when we met. Never once did he talk about or share all the experiences working on the Manhattan Project, serving in World War II, being in the Blue Band. I do probably vaguely remember him talking about, because he had asked me if I ever played a musical instrument, which I did. I was in the high school band. And I do remember him saying that he did play in the band, but he never said it was the Blue Band, which was quite impressive. You know, fortunately for Sullivan County, Doc and Stevie moved here, and they settled their family here. And, you know, as part of that, they really were ingrained in the community. They cared about the community. They wanted the community to succeed. You know, I remember reading that Doc was actually published the first tourism guide for Sullivan County. Just think about that, 1967. I mean, I was relatively young in 1967, but I don't remember a lot of tourism guides around, especially in rural areas. And he highlighted those attributes of Sullivan County, which truly showed how much he cared about this area. His dedication, it goes on and on in terms of what he did for the community. I'm honored to have known such a humble man, and actually very grateful. He can teach us all great lessons in doing for others and putting others above yourself. It's really appropriate that we name a section of one of the major throughways through Sullivan County in honor of Doc, to memorialize him in the community, a community that he endeared and that endeared him. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. It's really an honor to have the Executive Director of District 30 here today. She and her staff and her team have been such a large part of making this happen. And we are all, everybody in this room is truly a lover of Doc and Stevie Shoemaker. Whether we're dear friends, community members, family members, we all love Doc and Stevie Shoemaker, and they were a team. I truly wish maybe today that this could be the Doc and Stevie Shoemaker Highway, but we do have some criteria in Pennsylvania when we name things, and one of the criteria is that person needs to be a veteran. And we all know that Doc had a service to this country during World War II, and his stories about that are really very interesting. I won't attempt to tell them today because his role was just a little bit complicated, very impressive, and I would suggest if you'd like to know more about it, you ask a family member because they could fill you in with some of that. But truly he did a grand service to this country, and there's so many reasons that we wanted to name this piece of this highway after Doc Shoemaker, but that would be one of the main pieces of the criteria. As you will hear as people speak about Doc today, and I've told everybody who's going to say a few words about Doc, don't be shy about how long your words are because everybody loves Doc's stories. There are so many of them, and Doc himself was a man of many stories. He could always fill your time with great stories about all of the different things that he was involved in and was part of. And he could offer you some advice every now and then, as I think has already been sort of suggested. And near the latter years, when I would spend some time with him, one of the pieces of advice that he would offer to me was one that I didn't want to hear. But you know that veterinarians are really themselves extremely valuable and knowledgeable about health overall. And often we would either run into each other in one of the restaurants in town because he loved every restaurant in town, or we might be at something where there was lunch, and Doc would look at me and he would say, "You want to live longer? Eat less." Oh, Doc, I don't want to hear that. Doc always, as the restaurant folks in this town can know, he always ordered a half a sandwich, not a whole sandwich. Oh, it was tough. And so I love to eat, and Doc would remind me of that on a constant basis. When I'm not doing what I should do with that, I always remember what Doc told me. And I want to go back to really thanking the PennDOT staff again for their part of this, and I thought, you know, it just sounds easy. Just go name a road and name it after Doc Shoemaker. Well, this is the bill. There's lots of words here, lots of pages here. This is what it involves, because it really is, it's legal, it's official, it's a law, and it takes a lot of different words to put together the exact designation and the way that it fits into the law and becomes truly the Doc Shoemaker Highway. So, going through all the legislative part of it, going through the PennDOT part of it, certainly took some time. I want to thank my staff, and particularly Jason Kreis, who's here today, who had a large part in this and spent a lot of time on it, but we all did it with a dear love of Doc Shoemaker and the Shoemaker family. When I first began to travel with Doc a little bit, I was in business, I was in the hospitality business, and of course, Doc was, as we all know, a phenomenally well-loved and very talented veterinarian. But I always thought maybe if you really, really went down to his true deep love, it was being a journalist, and it was owning the newspaper. And I have to tell you, I'm sure everybody in this room would agree, we are so grateful for the Sully Review every week when it comes out. And we thank John and his family for making sure that that happens now. What would I do without the Sully? How would I ever know what's going on in Sullivan County without the Sully? But when we first began to travel, and Dean mentioned that Doc had perhaps put out the first tourism magazine, we first traveled together, we were both on the board of the Endless Mountains Tourism Association, and that was very, very early in its stages. We had almost no money. We had some money to pay Vivian McCarty a little bit of a salary. She worked for us to promote the Endless Mountains. Doc, of course, had an advantage for that particular need because he had the paper. And he would use his resources to be able to promote the area with his newspaper and with his journalism talent. So one of the things I specifically remember with Doc is we would travel to try to promote the Endless Mountains, and we decided that in order to promote the Endless Mountains, of course, we needed to get outside of the Endless Mountains. So we would go to the state tourism meetings that they held once a year in Harrisburg. There would be 400 or 500 people at these tourism reception type meetings. So there were 4 of us that would go. Vivian would go with us, and Polly, who owned Cherry Mills Lodge, would go with us, and Doc. And we would go there with this game in mind. Okay, we're gonna separate as soon as we come in. We're gonna go around this room. We're gonna shake as many hands as we can. We're gonna say, hi, I'm Doc Shoemaker from Sullivan County. Do you know where the Endless Mountains is? And if somebody came back with 5 people, you won, who knew where the Endless Mountains was when we first started. And as time went on and the years went by, we couldn't even count anymore how many people would say, yeah, I know where the Endless Mountains is. So it was a game we were winning. That's what we knew. We were winning. The name was catching. People around the state were beginning to know the Endless Mountains is a place to go, a beautiful place to be. And Sullivan County is certainly top of the list of the beautiful places to be, not only in the state, but certainly in the Endless Mountains, too. So I want to thank everybody involved here today, everybody who's been part of everything that has made this a wonderful honor, so very due to our Doc Shoemaker. It is his birthday, you know, it's been mentioned. So we have birthday cakes for later, and we want everybody to please enjoy a cup of coffee and a birthday cake for Doc's birthday today. And I want to say that I truly believe, you know, we do in this area, we do some things to, in so many ways, honor the person of the year, family of the year, the business of the year, the whatever. And truly, in my mind, the Shoemaker family and the incredible children Steve and Doc have here in our area, and the grandchildren, they're also incredible, outstanding people. I think they should be the family of the year every year. If I could get to vote for that, that's what they would be. So it's truly an honor and a privilege for me to be here today and to be part of this for Doc. And I also want to introduce to you somebody that we are truly thrilled to have here today. I know Doc would be excited about this gentleman. He's excited about Sandy. He's excited about everybody else that's here, but he would be really especially also excited about the Secretary of Agriculture being here, Secretary Russell Redding. Because after all, Doc was a phenomenal veterinarian. And the world of agriculture was his life. I mean, he knew every farm, probably every animal in the entire region. So I want to say that we are just so pleased to have the Secretary here today. And of course, Governor Tom Wolf nominated Russell Redding to serve as the 26th Secretary of Agriculture for this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And that was in January of 2015. He was confirmed by the Senate on May the 14th, 2015. He's the former dean of the School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at Delaware Valley University. Spent more than 20 years representing Pennsylvania agriculture as a public servant in Harrisburg and Washington. He is absolutely no stranger in our territory. I've seen Secretary Redding here so many times in our region, and we certainly appreciate that as a state secretary that he does that. He grew up on his family dairy farm. He operates a general crop farm in Gettysburg, a graduate of Penn State's College of Ag Sciences. I'd like you all to please welcome Secretary Redding.
Representative Pickett, thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction. It is always good to come to Sullivan County. I want to say thank you to our commissioners. Thank you for your work and your partnership in so many ways. I don't get a chance very often to say that, but we've got a moment here to acknowledge that and really appreciate the partnership with the Department of Ag very much. To City Council and PennDOT, all of the friends. I wish I knew all of the affiliations in this room, but it gives us some great insight to Doc Shoemaker, right? Touched a lot of lives in this community, and the stories that Representative Pickett has noted that each have, I'd love to hear those. And maybe we will over some cake. But also just want to take a moment and say thanks to Representative Pickett. When I first got the invitation, I thought, well, that's interesting. No one has ever invited me to a PennDOT sign ceremony. No one's ever invited us to talk about a veterinarian, a profession, an institution in a community that wasn't sort of ag proper, right? In this case, it is agriculture, and the more that I researched and looked at Doc Shoemaker, I believe we have met through the Sullivan County Fair over the years, right? And it goes back over 20 years. But the more that I researched and looked at his life, this was sort of a great moment to also just pause, right? And to acknowledge the amazing and incredible life in which he led. And to the family, what an amazing mom and dad, right? Amazing family, but when you think about the stories and how rich that family story is. So to each of you, thank you for continuing the work of the family, your own professions, but also the critical link back to Stevie and Doc. So thank you for being here and allowing me to be part of this. This is really a great moment, so thank you for that. As I looked at his life's work, I kept thinking of somebody who would be an amazing mentor, right? Just to have the opportunity to be with him and to learn from him, not just in his work of the veterinary sciences, but also just in relationships of the community, right? Be a great mentor. He made commitments to do big things and then followed through, which is really incredible. He put his life into it, and as I looked at it, he's one of these individuals, and there are a few, where they have this amazing ability to be both the science and the civics, right? And I think of agriculture many times as being this really interesting blend of science and civics. And there's probably not a person who embodies that more than Dr. Shoemaker, right? Just had this sort of interesting life of finding the balance and the equilibrium. I'm not sure which one paid for what part of that, right? Whether the veterinary practice paid for the news and publishing or the other way around. But another image came to mind, one that we know well is James Herriot, right? When you think of all creatures great and small. And as I thought about this guy and what he's done, this sort of image of somebody who is this sort of community veterinarian who was dispensing both medical advice and probably a lot of other advice, right? So James Herriot and that imagery comes to mind for me. You've heard some of the bio, but I think it's worth repeating just because I think it gives the story of Doc Solomon. So when he, Shoemaker, so when he graduated from Penn State, and it was the piccolo in the blue band, right? I don't know of another piccolo player anywhere, but he did in the blue band. I think it's a great story. Work on the Manhattan Project tells you a lot. But it was that bacteriology degree which really intrigued me, right? For somebody who was in the science and bacteriology, and then make the leap, of course, standing in a volunteer fire department, and he volunteered for that duty. With the family, as noted to our commissioners, and he spent several years, I think, as a commissioner here in Sullivan County. He even worked for the Department of Agriculture for a couple of years. In critical years in the 1960s, and those who know agriculture and a little bit of history, what we were dealing with around TB at the time, and how challenging that was, particularly for animal agriculture. But in his role, where he was inspecting the farms that shipped into Dolly Madison, right, the public health concerns of TB, and that link between animal and human health, he was entrusted with. As the veterinarian, the other piece of that was around tuberculosis and brucellosis. But the teacher in him, right, also to take his knowledge into the classroom and to teach biology and chemistry, to also teach, I think, a little bit of history in there. So I began to think about, Dr. Shoemaker, and thinking about what he saw in his lifetime of the changes in agriculture, both here in the county, but particularly in veterinary science. And you think about in the 1960s, he's getting his start what that relationship was with the veterinarians. You know, the size of agriculture. All of us are challenged by the changes that have occurred, I think, in that industry, and you probably see it right here in this landscape of Sullivan County. But when you look at it, what he witnessed, the scale and complexity of animal agriculture, going from the general practice, all focused on large animals, to that sort of mixed-use practice of large and small animals. Looking at the specializations that have developed in the veterinary science field, looking at livestock operations that used to be commercial and maybe have now as many backyard farms and those in the lifestyle of agriculture. But looking at how people treat their pets, right? And what has happened over the last 50 or 60 years of our relationship with our companion animals, and what he saw over that course of his life and professional work. The discoveries in the veterinary science field of the antibiotics, the penicillins, the bacterial resistance, right? All of those things were contemporary issues for him. And of course the vaccines and such. And technology. I don't know whether he endorsed or embraced the technology or not in veterinary science, but it was there and certainly part of the practice. But what was unchanged in that, as we look in his life's work, what was unchanged is the person, right? All of the influences of time, the technology, the sciences, it didn't change him. He understood that he was in the relationship business, whether that was printing a newspaper or practicing veterinary medicine. It was a relationship. And that is a key quality that we have a chance today to both recognize and honor. So to Representative Pickett, thank you for leading the legislation to recognize him. I think it's, as we look at these road signs, I do that often wonder, what's the story? What is the individual's story? And I think in this case, when we look at this sign, we will be reminded of his impact on all things great and small, right? We will be reminded as we travel the road here of somebody who was a mentor to a family, to a community, somebody who lived a life well lived and well earned. So I will look at this sign with pride, remember his work in this community, the contributions he's made, but also to his legacy, right? The legacy of a community as noted here by Dean and others. It's really a great story. So thanks for sharing it with us. Thanks for honoring him and honoring the family in this community. And importantly, asking us to be part of it as Department of Agriculture. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Redding. Those words were so meaningful to each and every one of us, and I know that Doc was pleased and is so happy to have you here today. There are two more people who want to tell us some stories about Doc, and as I said, there can never be too many stories about Doc. We all love them. One I'd like to have come and tell a particular piece of her story is Marty Denman. Would you come and tell us just a little bit about your time on the road with Doc?
Now you're all in trouble. My name is Marty Denman, and I helped Doc for the last 14 years of his life. I am a native of Dewshore, and like Doc, I love where I live. When I was told by Tina Pickett that her office was in the process to dedicate a road in Sullivan County in memory of Doc, I thought, there can't be a better way to preserve his memory. Doc loved to be on the road. When I started helping in the vet office, it was not unordinary to be on the road, traveling to Shunk to vaccinate horses, and while there, stop to see his friend Art Clark and the Motorcycle Museum and take pictures. Of course, stop at Bommick's General Store to see if they needed more tourist guides. Then, on the road to Dewshore. In the beginning, Doc would drive, but as years went by, I became his chauffeur. Call Kathy Robbins, get that rabies clinic set up in Muncie Valley. See if Judy St. Clair is open. I need ferns. So on the road we'd go. On the road to see many animals. Animal calls, animal calls. He would say, it's just easier if we go there to give dog shots or pull quills from a dog's nose in Hillsgrove Hotel. Many times we were on the road to a dog or cat's home because it was more proper to have them pass in their own home with their family. We would be on the road home, usually pretty quiet and sad. January was on the road to the farm show. Call Harvey, see if he's boiling sap. On the road we'd go. Spring was check with Black Creek or Lori, see if they have baby lambs. We need a picture for the Sully. See if Norman wants to go to Ag Days in Susquehanna County, on the road. Doc always knew where we were going on the road, except one time. Got to get a picture of Mountain Spring Lake before they drain it. We went on a back road on top of Red Rock Mountain. Norman Taylor's, Doc's buddy, was in the back. After traveling miles on what was really not a road, I said, "Where the hell are we?" The words came out of Doc that I thought I would never hear. I don't know. I looked at my phone, no service, nowhere to turn around, rocks on one side, cliffs on the other. I said, we gotta get out of here. If we get stuck, I'm gonna have to walk to 487 and probably get eaten by a bear or some mountain monster, and they'll find you two dead a year from now. They thought it was funny. Luckily, we got turned around. Thank God. Oh my gosh. And we were back on the road, a real road this time. A good many mornings we were on the road to deliver the Sully to Lower Sullivan and Lycoming County. And of course, breakfast at Fox's. I would do the driving and footwork, and Doc would do the paperwork. A couple of times I said, I'll go in here. He'd say, no, I'm going to get it. I'd say, no, I will. I'd say, no, it's okay. He'd say, they owe me money. I'd say, okay. He'd usually come out smiling, I didn't ask nothing. We were on the road to State College so Doc could attend continuing education classes at the age of 95. Back on the road home, but not until we stopped at Sam's, where Doc learned how to drive a buggy. He suggested getting one for home so he could be on the road to town. No one thought that was a very good idea. Doc driving a motorized wheelchair on the road around town, no. Fall was on the road to set up the Sully display at the fair, Jimmy Sysocks for apples, Harvey Vose for potatoes, Jim Ahern's for more apples, or with Kathy Worthington to tour old cemeteries. I never left Doc along the road, but I did leave him at the Jolly Trolley one day. It was very busy at the trolley that day, so we made our way to the back, a small table for two. I faced the back wall, and Doc faced the crowd in the door. As I was finishing my half a tuna, Doc leaned to me and said, "You're gonna have to give up your seat." I said, "What?" He repeated, "You're gonna have to give up your seat." At that second, I heard Kim, the owner, say, "Hi, Tina." It was Doc's longtime buddy, Tina Pickett. He was kicking me out of my seat, his vet helper, his chauffeur, his wheelchair pusher, for Tina. Tina came back right away and said, "Hi, Doc. Hi, Marty." I said, "Here, Tina, you can have my seat." "Oh, no." I said, "Doc said I have to give up my seat for you." She said, "Okay." I said to Doc, you know, now you can find your own way back to the Sully. Bye. So I left him, and he was laughing to the point of tears. Kicked out of my seat for Tina 1. Standing at the table spaying cats or pulling porcupine quills for 14 years, I heard endless stories about Doc on the road. Traveling to Philly to college, to Binghamton to court Stevie, to Swiftwater to see his family, camping or canoeing with his kids, college trips, weddings, cruises, graduations, grandchildren, vacation, holidays together. On the road to help animals, his community, or just a friend. Doc loved being on the road for the Sully, taking pictures. He remembered and loved them all. His memory was fantastic to the end. Doc was a traveler. This is the best tribute to Doc Shoemaker ever. Thank you for all who made this possible so we can say, Doc is on his road. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. I think we can safely say that I never ran across Doc Shoemaker when he didn't have that little Nikon in his pocket, and he could take a picture anywhere and everywhere all the time. And the Sully is well known for its phenomenal pictures. And always through those years, Doc was always looking for the next best picture. And there are someplace, John, it may be in a book, I'm not sure, but there has to be an incredible collection of puppies. A dozen puppies at once, lined up in a picture. How do you line up a dozen puppies? I have no idea, but that would be the front picture. And we all, when we get our Sully every week, we look to see what's the picture on the Sully this week. And for so many years, those were a lot of the animals that Doc had found. And those lambs, every spring, absolutely, they were on the front of the Sully because he would make sure of that. I would like to have, we just love everybody in the Shoemaker family, but eldest son, Tom, has agreed today to speak for the family and give us some more, maybe some more Doc stories from the family's viewpoint.
Well, I can't hardly top Marty. Those are great stories. But I want to say, on behalf of the family, Miss Tuska, Tina, Secretary Redding, I see at least one commissioner. I saw the sheriff. I see the treasurer of the county. Thank you all for coming to this today. It means a lot to all of us. Most of my brothers and my sister are here, as well as some in-laws. We certainly do appreciate it. One thing with my dad, you know, I think a big thing in his life, here he is in the Depression before World War II in Wilkes-Barre. You know, what do you do? You know, he went to Penn State. Obviously, he was a smart guy. He could get into Penn State. But World War II comes. It was a terrible thing, but it created opportunities. And one of the opportunities was Penn Veterinary School. What do you do after veterinary school in 1950? You need a job. You have the starting of a family. I was born in 51. But as you know, there's 5 boys and my sister in this family. It's a big family. We're looking for opportunities. There's an opportunity in Sullivan County. So in 1952, we come to Sullivan County and we've never left. And I always think of, you know, where was my mom's favorite place? And it was home. It was Dushore. This was the place that she always wanted to be. So even though we came from other areas, you know, from the Wyoming Valley, the Lackawanna Valley, we moved here in the 50s, and this is our home, and we love it here. There's no doubt about it. And my dad, mom and dad both made a living here for years. But it's not just about making a living in Sullivan County. You have to be engaged with the community. You have to give back. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, I take away to this day is, you know, you're out with your careers and you're doing your family things, but you always have to give back to where you live. And what a great place to give back to. I think my career has ended, but I'm here. We're starting to volunteer. John still has a great service in the Sullivan Review. My sister is here and does a lot of volunteer work. So to me, the legacy of my dad and my mom is to give back. It's not just, you know, being here and leaving. So that's an important thing that I take away from my dad's life, and I hope that everybody else here does too. We certainly appreciate the naming of the highway for my dad. And as Marty said very eloquently, he was always on the road. And every day he loved to come back to Deushore. And he loved to travel all over the world. But this was home, no doubt about it. Today I brought, in memory of him, I brought his little convertible. So if anybody, it's out in the parking lot now, if anybody, I'm sure everybody remembers the little red convertible. It is here today. You can take pictures if you'd like. But, you know, just in closing, thank you very much for your time and effort on everybody's part. Everybody that worked with that, everybody that knew my dad and my mom, we appreciate it. My brothers and sister and I appreciate it. We'll never forget this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for your words about your dad, and I know you spoke for the whole family, and we're just so pleased to hear from you today. Sandy Tosca, would you assist the family, because we would like to have all the family members that are here, grandchildren, if there's some grandchildren here, please come up and show us the Doc Shoemaker Highway sign.